Okay, so let's just jump right in with a pretty startling idea.
Yeah.
For years, we've all pictured democracy dying in a blaze of glory. A military coup, a revolution.
Right, something dramatic, a midnight takeover.
Exactly.
Oh.
But what if the real threat isn't that at all? What if it's a slow, quiet decay led by the very people we vote into power?
You've just hit on the central, powerful idea behind Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt's book, How Democracies Die.
An incredibly influential book.
Hugely. And our goal in this deep dive is really to unpack its essential insights for you, to look at the surprising ways democracies fall apart from the inside and these invisible rules that are supposed to keep them alive.
And why those rules are so fragile right now.
Precisely.
So if it's not a big, sudden coup, what is it? What's the main thing most of us are probably missing?
Well, the book's core argument is that democracies today don't usually die in one big, catastrophic event.
It's not a single moment.
Not at all. It's a slow grind, an incremental weakening of institutions, of norms. It's this quiet buildup of small abuses that are, often technically legal, so they don't set off everyone's alarm bells.
So they use the system to break the system. The whole mechanism is subtle because the leaders who are doing this, they're using lawful processes.
Exactly. They get into office the right way through an election, but then they start to exploit legal loopholes, stretch the Constitution, and just piece by piece, they dismantle the checks and balances that are supposed to constrain them.
And we've seen this happen.
Oh, absolutely. It's a global pattern. You can look at historical examples like Hitler or, more recently with figures like Hugo Chavez in Venezuela or Erdogan in Turkey.
Right.
Each of them used democratic channels to gain power. But then they methodically twisted those same legal tools to sideline their opponents and weaken independent courts or the press. Winning the election is just step one.
Okay, so that raises a massive question. If the written rules, the Constitution, the laws, if they can be bent so easily, what is supposed to hold everything together, there has to be something else, like the spirit of the system.
You've put your finger on it. That's the crucial point. Levitsky and Ziblatt identify two of these unwritten bedrock norms that really sustain a democracy.
And the first one is?
The first is mutual toleration. It sounds simple, but it's profound. It just means accepting the legitimacy of your political opponent.
So respecting their right to govern if they win a fair election.
Yes. Even if you despise their policies, when that norm fails, your rivals stop being competitors. They become enemies you have to destroy.
Right. But, that sounds a little soft, maybe. If the other side is truly toxic, why shouldn't a politician use every single legal tool they have? I mean, the other side would probably do the same.
And that is exactly where the second norm comes in. Institutional forbearance.
Forbearance. Can you give us a clear example of that? It sounds a bit abstract.
Think of it like this. Forbearance is the political version of having the launch codes to a nuclear weapon, but choosing never, ever to use them.
Okay.
It means you deliberately hold back from using actions that are technically legal, but would just shatter the democratic spirit. Things like packing the Supreme Court just because you have the votes, or using the filibuster to grind the entire government to a halt. When forbearance goes, democracy becomes a brutal zero-sum war.
So if those two norms, toleration and forbearance, are the guardrails, who are the guards? The authors seem to point straight at political parties, calling them gatekeepers.
They do. Parties are supposed to be the first line of defense. Their job is to filter out extremists or, candidates who are openly anti-democratic before they even get on the ballot.
But the danger comes when a party decides winning is more important than the health of democracy itself.
That's the moment of failure, when short-term partisan gain trumps everything else.
And I guess this isn't just a problem for politicians to solve. Ultimately, the responsibility has to shift back to us, to the citizens.
It has to. The authors are very clear that democracy is a shared enterprise. It needs active participation. It needs collective defense. The only thing strong enough to push back against extreme polarization is a public that is vigilant and demands a return to those norms.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The core takeaway seems pretty clear. When you have extreme polarization and you lose that mutual toleration and institutional forbearance,
you create the perfect storm.
Right. You get an environment where democracy is incredibly vulnerable to being dismantled from the inside without a single shot ever being fired.
And the really fascinating challenge this leaves us with is about recognizing restraint. If institutional forbearance is all about not doing things that are technically legal because they harm the spirit of democracy, how can you, as a citizen, collectively enforce an unwritten rule? especially before your leaders have already used the written ones to destroy all the guardrails. That's the puzzle we all have to solve.